There is a pattern I see consistently among Malaysian patients that concerns me every time, because it is entirely preventable and because the cost of the waiting is borne completely by the person who waited. The pattern is this: something hurts and the person waits. They wait to see whether it resolves on its own. They wait until it becomes severe enough to justify spending money on care. They wait until a specific life event, a deadline at work, a school exam period, a family commitment passes, and things become less busy. They wait until the pain is affecting their sleep, their work performance, or their relationships. By the time they present for treatment, they have often been waiting for 3 to 6 months. What seemed like a reasonable temporary strategy has become a life lived around a limitation that is now structurally different and harder to treat than it was at the beginning. The clinical research on duration of symptoms and treatment outcomes is unambiguous. For acute lower back pain treated within the first 4 weeks of onset, full resolution rates are above 80%. For the same condition treated at 3 to 6 months, full resolution rates fall below 50% and 12-month recurrence rates increase substantially. The condition has not simply become older, it has become structurally and neurologically different. Movement compensations have been reinforced over months, sensitization patterns are established, and the tissue has often undergone structural changes from sustained loading under pain. For rotator cuff tendinopathy, early treatment within the first 3 months typically produces full resolution within 8 to 12 weeks of progressive loading rehabilitation. At 12 months of chronic tendinopathy, the structural changes in the tendon require a longer and more intensive rehabilitation course with a meaningfully lower chance of complete resolution. The same pattern holds for patellar tendinopathy, plantar fasciitis, hip flexor conditions, and most overused musculoskeletal presentations. The window for easiest treatment is exactly the window in which most Malaysian patients choose to wait. This is not a character flaw, it is a predictable result of how people make healthcare decisions under uncertainty, competing priorities, and real financial constraints. But understanding the gap between intuitive decision-making and clinical reality is what can change the outcome next time something hurts. While pain is present but untreated, the body adapts. Movement patterns shift to protect the painful structure. Muscles crossing the painful joint become reflexively inhibited. Adjacent structures compensate, loading tissues not designed to sustain those forces. Central sensitization develops. The brain's pain processing becomes amplified beyond what the tissue injury alone would produce. Turning that sensitivity back down after it is established is one of the longest and most difficult parts of chronic pain rehabilitation. The first 8 weeks of acute pain are the critical window for preventing that sensitization from becoming established in the nervous system. Treatment within that window interrupts the upward calibration of pain sensitivity before it becomes self-sustaining and drives the condition into chronicity. For acute musculoskeletal presentations in Malaysia, physiotherapy within the first 4 weeks is not an optional luxury. It is the intervention with the highest expected clinical return. It is cheaper, faster, more complete, and more likely to restore full function than waiting until the condition has had months to become structurally established. What are the real barriers to seeking care earlier? Cost is real, and it is understandable. A 3-session acute physiotherapy program at 100 ringgit to 150 ringgit per session costs 300 ringgit to 450 ringgit. The same condition treated as a chronic problem at 6 months typically requires 15 to 24 sessions. A cost of 1,500 ringgit to 3,600 ringgit with less complete outcomes and longer total recovery time. That is before accounting for the indirect costs, the months of limited function, missed training, reduced work capacity, impaired sleep, and the accumulated psychological burden of sustained pain. The second barrier is cultural normalization. Back pain, knee pain, and neck pain are so common in Malaysia that the social context implies this is simply how things are. The third barrier, and the one most directly addressable for Rehab, is uncertainty about whether the symptoms warrant attention. The clinical self-assessment tools on PhysioNear.com exist specifically to answer that question in 3 minutes, using the same clinical reasoning a physiotherapist would apply. If the result says you need physiotherapy, do not wait. The link in the description connects you to our clinic and our full resource library.